From its humble beginnings, World Championship Wrestling rose to extraordinary heights.
The #1 wrestling company on the...
If you grew up watching wrestling in the 90s, you lived through a golden age. Not just because of WWF, but because of the war. The Monday Night War, and no, it wasn't fought with tanks and soldiers. It was fought with steel chairs and 90s pyro. In one corner, you had Vince McMahon's WWF, and in the other, Billionaire Ted Turner's WCW. And for a while, WCW looked unbeatable. But somewhere along the way, the wheels fell off. Hard. Today we're breaking down the rise and the spectacular collapse of WCW. And spoiler alert, it involves money, egos, and more missed opportunities than a Goldberg promo. Let's start at the top. Ted Turner just didn't want to compete with WWF. He wanted to crush it. And when you have Ted Turner type of money, you don't start small. WCW became the chosen one, funded by Turner Broadcasting and stacked with a roster that looked like a WWF alumni meeting. You had Hogan, Savage, Hall, Nash. They all jumped ship. Turner gave Eric Bischoff the keys to the kingdom, and Bischoff floored it. WCW Nitro launched in 1995 and went head-to-head with Monday Night Raw. And get this, Nitro started airing live, giving WCW the edge to spoil WWF results in real time. Savage move? Even pettier. They once told fans Mick Foley would win the WWF title that night, thinking it would make the fans not tune in. Boy, did that backfire. Millions changed the channel to see Foley win. It was glorious. I was watching Nitro, and I also changed the channel. Well, I had two TVs back to back. But anyways, then came the NWO. Nash and Hall invaded Nitro like they were coming back to reclaim turf. Enter Hulk Hogan, turning heel. Hollywood Hogan. It was like Santa Claus joining a biker gang, and fans loved it. The NWO blurred the lines between fiction and reality, making fans question whether they were seeing a storyline or a legit takeover. WCW skyrocketed. Ratings crushed WWF for 83 straight weeks in a row. Nitro beat Raw. 83 weeks. That's like Roman Reigns holding the WWF title for what, 900 days? Oh wait, but here's the thing. Cracks started to show. The NWO got bloated. New members every week. Sting was up in the rafters doing his Batman cosplay. Goldberg came along and wrecked everyone. Things were hot. But behind the scenes, nothing but chaos. Backstage Politics wasn't just a subplot in WCW, it was the entire script. Wrestlers weren't just fighting for titles, they were fighting for control. Contracts were bloated, creative decisions were personal favors, and the lines between kayfabe and corporate chaos were blurred like a drunken camera zoomed during a Russo segment. Let's talk about contracts for a second. WCW had guaranteed money deals. Sounds great, right? Except it meant no incentives to perform at your best. No hustle, no drive. You showed up, you got paid. Whether you were tearing the house down or you were phoning it in, your paycheck was the same. It was guaranteed. That creates a locker room culture where compliancy becomes contagious. Meanwhile, WWF was offering a earn your spot contract, meaning if you wanted the big bucks, you had to bring it. And that was fair game. Like everybody in WWF knew about the guaranteed contracts. And then there was Eric Bischoff, visionary, absolutely, but maybe also a bit too much of a fan. He treated WCW like a fantasy booking sandbox, except this had unlimited resources and no sandbox supervisor. He signed talent not just to boost ratings, but to pop himself. And at one point, WCW was like an all-star game for aging WWF legends. Great for nostalgia, but bad for building the future. But let's be fair. Bischoff did give us some fire moments. The Cruiserweight division, legit and incredible. You had guys like Dean Malenko, Hood and Toot Guerrero. Yeah, that's what I call him. Ultimo Dragon, and of course, my favorite, Rey Mysterio. Their matches were fast, innovative, and miles ahead of their time. But WCW failed to capitalize on them beyond the curtain junker. They were appetizers for the matches before the main course of Hogan talking for 20 minutes. And speaking of Hogan talking, man, I mean, I love that guy, but it never ended. When your top guy has creative control, you have a creative team, and that starts having a personal wish list. Hogan could rewrite storylines in real time, and often he did. He wasn't the only one. Guys like Nash, Hall, and even Luger had sway over booking decisions. And at one point, it felt like WCW was being booked by a group chat of egos. Let's talk about Starrcade 97 for a second. This was supposed to be the moment Sting versus Hogan, a year-long build-up and Sting hadn't spoken in months. He was lurking in the rafters, watching, waiting. Fans were salivating for justice, for the Dark Knight to finally come down, bring down Hollywood Hogan and the NWO. But what did we get? A botched finish. A fast count that looked normal. Confusion? Yeah. Then Bret Hart randomly restarting the match like some kind of time-traveling referee. What should have been the peak of WCW storytelling turned into a head-scratching mess. And that moment, it mattered. It really mattered. Fans were looking forward to it. It made the fans question whether WCW knew what they were doing. Spoiler alert, they didn't. And let's not forget Vince Russo, the man behind some of WWF's most chaotic Attitude Era moments, who jumped ship to WCW ready to inject Crash TV into Turner's cash cow. But instead of shock value brilliance, we got Judy Bagwell on a forklift. Swerves for the sake of swerves, title changes that literally meant nothing, and matches with no logic. And yes, David Arquette becoming WCW champion was to promote a movie. Now, to be clear, David Arquette didn't ask for that. He didn't want to win the title. He knew it was a bad idea, but WCW did it anyway because, surprise, it made headlines. But not the good kind. It cheapened the belt, it insulted the fans, and it even made the most loyal WCW viewers, oh no, not again. Behind the scenes, morale tanked, the younger guys were fed up, Chris Jericho saw the writing on the wall and jumped ship to WWF at the time. Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, Perry Saturn, Chris Benoit, they all followed suit. They weren't just looking for a paycheck, they wanted an opportunity, and when they got to the WWF, they proved they deserved it. And meanwhile, WCW tried to fix its problems the same way it created them, by just throwing more money around. They brought back Vince Russo, then they fired him, then they brought them back again. Confusion reigned. Storylines were dropped, restarted, reversed. 1 week Sting was in the main event, the next week he was missing. Titles changed hands on Thunder, and then changed hands again at the house shows. There was no consistency, and through it all, WWF was finding its stride. The Attitude Era was starting, and it was untouchable. Stone Cold Steve Austin was a beer-drinking anti-hero fans loved. The Rock was turning insults into catchphrases and catchphrases into merchandise gold. In WCW, they were still trying to figure out what to do with the 50-year-old Lex Luger. Now, the AOL Time Warner merger, that was the final nail in the coffin. The new executives who came in didn't really see wrestling as a safe brand. WCW was hemorrhaging cash, the ratings were plummeting, and the product was a joke. So when Vince McMahon came knocking with an offer, they didn't even flinch. They sold it all. Library, assets, trademarks for pennies on the dollar. It was over, just like that. The Monday Night War ended, not with a bang, but with a press release. And Vince McMahon, he walked out with a Raw. He walked out on Raw with a smug grin and the WCW logo behind him. That was the ultimate betrayal. The rise and fall of WCW is like watching a roller coaster built by madmen. It had everything, money, drama, legends, chaos, but in the end, it burned too bright, too fast. You see, a Billionaire's Playground became a cautionary tale, and somewhere, Vince McMahon still watches the WCW logo flash on old tapes and grins. And that's the real deal on the rise and fall of WCW. How do you see the AEW versus NXT war? You think that's got the same type of heat? Let us know in the comments below, and until next time, I will see you after the bell.